Hey filmmakers! Today we're going to take a look at the PolarPro Cinema Series ND Filters and talk about why they make your drone footage look so much better, especially when you're doing hyperlapses and time lapses. The ND filters we're going to look at are specifically made for the Mavic 2 Pro, but honestly this applies to all drones of every make and model, and you can get ND filters for just about any of them. So the main reason that you want to use ND filters is to get that nice, smooth motion blur. That's what it all boils down to. So you've probably heard of the 180-degree shutter rule before. Basically what that means is that whatever your frame rate is, you want your shutter speed to be twice of that. So in order to get the proper exposure when you're out flying your drone, a lot of people think, oh, I'm just gonna crank up the shutter speed because it's so bright out. But in the end, what it does is make your footage look really jittery because it gets rid of all the motion blur because it's taking every frame so quickly that shutter's going and it's just not giving you any motion blur. Just like you just saw in my hand, a bunch of motion blur. You wouldn't see that if I had my shutter speed jacked up way high. All right, that's enough blah, blah, blah. Let's take a look at some of the footage I shot using these ND filters so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, time out. I keep talking about the 180-degree shutter rule, but you're going to completely break that when you're doing these hyperlapses because you need your shutter speed to be even slower than that, like way slower. For example, you're shooting at 24 frames per second. Usually your shutter speed would be 1/50th of a second, but we need it to be a lot slower to get that nice, smooth motion blur in these hyperlapses and make them all blend together and look really smooth. So everything that I showed you was around 1/15th, 1/10th, or even a quarter of a second. You just have to play with it and see what looks best for your video and the subjects that you're shooting. Now let's take a look at another time lapse that I shot using a really quick shutter speed of like 1/240th without any ND filters at all, and see if you can spot a difference between this footage and the previous time lapses. If we take a freeze frame from this clip, you can see that there's almost no motion blur, and these are in cars going like 60, 70 miles an hour. Now in contrast, if we take a still frame from one of the other time lapses I took with a nice long shutter speed of like 1/4 of a second or half a second, you can see that the motion blur is really long and smooth, and that's because the shutter was open for a long time, so you're just seeing all the travel and motion that these vehicles are making. Now back to the PolarPro ND filters. These have a fantastic build quality, really great glass that doesn't add any weird green tint or anything like that. They're truly neutral density, and the build quality is obviously fantastic. They have a great metal rim around them, and they're really easy to put onto the camera and off. It comes with this little plastic tool that allows you to pop them on and off so that it's easy to switch out filters when you need to. Honestly, every time I launch the drone, I've got an ND filter on there, even if I'm not doing hyperlapses, because again, I want that nice motion blur, and I want to be able to shoot wide open at f2.8 so I can get the sharpest footage possible out of the Mavic 2 Pro. I highly recommend always flying with ND filters. Never fly without them unless you're like flying at night and you need the most amount of light possible to get in. Now PolarPro did not send these to me or pay me to say any of this, hashtag not sponsored, bought them with my own money. So if you're interested in doing the same, definitely check out the links in the description below. And if you want to see another video about how to get better drone footage, check out the video that I linked over there. It's pretty awesome. All right, I'll see you in the next video.